Hello everybody! Welcome to Kevin Plays Disc Golf. Today we have a playthrough and course review from Northwind Disc Golf Course in Hopkinton, New Hampshire. My name is Kevin and I play disc golf. Filming on course for this video was done on April 6th, 2025. The course originally opened in 2019. The primary way to get to the course is via Interstate 89. If you're coming from the north, you should take exit 7 for Route 103 to Davisville and Contoocook. At the end of the off-ramp, take a left and go under I-89. Just after going under I-89, take a right onto Warner Road. After about a half mile, the red barn with the large flagpole out front will be on your left just after you cross the town line at Hopkinton, where Warner Road changes to Kearsarge Avenue. If you're coming from the south, take exit 6 for Route 127 for Contoocook and West Hopkinton. Take a right at the end of the off-ramp onto Route 127 north. After about 1¼ miles, you'll arrive in downtown Hopkinton. Take a left following Route 127. Just after this left, you'll go over a bridge and immediately bear left, not the sharp left, onto Kearsarge Avenue. After about 2 miles, you'll see the red barn with a large flagpole on your right. The small dirt parking lot behind this barn is the start of the course. This course does have an $8 fee to play for the day. On the back side of the red barn, there's a small kiosk that has envelopes for your cash and a drop box. There's also a sign with a QR code to pay by Venmo. This is also the location for the lost and found discs. I played the course in early April. The snow had just finished melting and it had rained for more or less the last 2 weeks straight, including heavy rains overnight and the morning of the day I played. The ground was about the most saturated with water that you will ever see here, so many of the places that are wet in the video are likely to be dry by mid-May. Also, the leaves are not yet out on the trees, so there are some places where you might be able to see the basket from the tee when I played, but not later in the year, though many of the trees on the wooded holes are mature pine trees and are unlikely to affect shots in the summer. I played the main layout, which though UDisc says was built in 2021, there have been changes that do not match UDisc. Several of the holes are the same as the OG18 layout, but there are several differences in places. Alcohol and tobacco rules are unclear. If you know for sure, post that in the comments. Trash is carry in, carry out. There is a porta potty adjacent to the parking lot. Drinking water is not available. Dogs are not allowed. Though I did not mention it in the video, there is a practice basket near the parking lot that is far enough away from hole 1 to not interfere. This is a disc golf exclusive property on private land. If it is busy, you're going to need to look out for others, as there will be discs thrown in different directions depending on whether those on course are playing the main layout or the OG18 layout. I'll have my overall review of the course at the end of the video. Be sure to post your comments as to your thoughts of what looks fun and where you think the problem areas are. Now we'll go to the entrance to the parking lot just off Kearsarge Avenue. Today we are at Northwind Disc Golf Course. As you can see, there's a small parking lot just off the road. If we turn just to our right, this is Kearsarge Avenue that we'll be driving in on. We want to park just behind the small barn there, and in the little shed on the right side there is the location where you can pay your fee, and there's also a lost and found disc area there. So from there, to get to the first tee, we are actually standing right next to the first tee. There are these 2 barrels that we have right here. And there's a start course sign just after the 2 barrels. And if we turn a little bit more to our right, we have the first tee pad. UDisc lists hole 1 as a 275-foot par 3. Downhill through some trees, so looks like it's pretty open until we get to within about 15 feet of the basket. So we'll see what we can do from here. Well, we went right there, but it looks like we should be able to get a par from there. Not bad for not having thrown anything for distance in a few weeks.
Right, so it has rained very heavily over the course of the last couple days, and the rain didn't really end until about 4 hours ago. So everything is still wet, everything is at very high water levels, and we can see if we go about 20 feet past the basket, we're going to end up wet. It's not bad, it's just kind of swampy there. Again, I'm way off to the right here, and if we sort of take a look around, we can see that the trees are fairly dense here. Here we are looking back up in the direction of the tee. Because of the amount of slope there is on this hill, we can't see it from here. I am off to the right, so if we turn to our right, I am not quite in the tree line, and it's going to be a tricky shot from here to get through everything. See, there's my disc. If we go up, we have lots of trees to get through the basket. This one definitely pays to be straight on and not right or left. It's going to minimize the amount of stuff you have to go through or around. One thing I will point out on the ground at the base, it is nice. They have arrows pointing to the next tee from here, so we can see those. There's also tape on the basket itself pointing in that direction. To get from the basket of 1 to the tee of 2, if we follow the arrows, that's going to send us sort of back out this way here. So we're going to follow the tree line that hole 1 is just behind. And if we look to our right, we can see the water level is fairly high there. But if we just continue along this tree line, appears we are at the tee for hole number 2, just over here. Hole 2 is a 275-foot par 3, dogleg right. This is very early in the year, so there are no leaves on any of the trees yet. So later in the year, it may be difficult to see what's going on. But from here, right now, we can see the basket. If we look to the right, there's a rock off in the distance, not this first large rock in the fairway, but sort of off through the trees on the right. And the basket is directly above that. That's way right. We'll see where it ends up. All right, so it turns out that there is out of bounds on the right. Stakes that mark out of bounds all the way along the right side, just in front of the swamp. I ended up bouncing off a tree and then going out of bounds. So I'm going to say that I went out of bounds somewhere right around up here. So I'm going to take it from here, and if we look to our left above these rocks, these are the rocks that I mentioned off the tee that are larger than I thought they were from the tee, but we can see the basket from here. So I will take my third shot from there with the out of bounds penalty stroke. And that did not work out so well. There is some wetness in the field, which based on the amount of rain we've had over the last couple of weeks or so is not surprising. And the snow melt as well. So we'll see if I can save bogey from here. That's a really good way to start off the round, with a long putt that's makeable. Hooray. With our back to the tee at the basket for hole 2, if we take a left, which is the direction that the arrow is pointing, we go up the hill and through this rock wall. And then if we take a left just past the rock wall, we can see the tee pad for hole 3. Hole 3 is a 315-foot par 3, significantly uphill, straight away across the field. It looks like one of the main differences between the main layout and the OG layout is that the main layout uses the new baskets with the yellow banding. So that is what I'm going to be playing for the duration of the round. So this is kind of diagonally across the field, and we'll see how this goes. One of the goals of this round is to try and put my new Streamline Pilot through its paces and see what I can do. And this is sort of the type of shot that I bought it for. I don't want to go too far past the basket here because I believe there may be out of bounds beyond the rock wall. And even if there's not out of bounds, the road is not too far behind. Something I am noticing is that there are white out of bounds stakes along the rock wall on the right side of the fairway, but it does not look like that really comes into effect too much here. And that was a super early release on me. That was all me, not the disc. All right, let's see if we can try that again, hopefully with a little bit better results. Not really, that was weak. No, but that'll be a drop in from there. To get from the basket of 3 to the tee of 4, with the road behind us, you can see there is a blue stripe on the basket. So we're going to go through this break in the wall. And if we continue on parallel to the wall, we have the tee box for hole 4 right in front of us. Hole 4 is a 342-foot par 3. The basket is up over this crest, but there is a good marker up there. If we see the large pine tree that is still green, that's sort of dangling out over the fairway, the basket is directly under the leftmost branch there. It's not to the back part of where the line of trees is. If we look at the tree on the left that's over the crest, the rightmost branch that's dangling out, the basket is directly underneath that. So though you can't see the basket from the tee, it's there's a pretty good marker as far as exactly where to go. That went a long way. I don't know if the road is out of bounds. It's not marked as such, but we shall see exactly where it ends up. There are out of bounds stakes on the road, so I'm going to take my one penalty shot and play from here. From here we can see the top of the basket just over the crest of the hill, straight off. Here we can see the basket directly under that branch that I mentioned off the tee. I do have a long putt here that's a little bit of a death putt with out of bounds right behind it. I'm definitely not in the ideal spot, but we'll see what we can do from here. Little short on my first putt, but it didn't go out of bounds, and I'm feeling really good about those 15-ish foot putts that I made for the 5 coming back. To get from the basket of 4 to the tee of 5, with the road directly behind us, we can continue straight, and there's this little pathway straight ahead, and the tee for hole 5 is right in front of us right here. Hole 5 is a 385-foot par 5. Straight ahead, if we follow the tree line on the left side and go out into the field, we can see the top half of the basket in front of the line of bushes. Again, it's kind of just open out there. See how far you can get it. That's going to be way right of where I want it, but I'll at least have a look at the basket from there. All right, from here in the middle of the fairway, we can see that the basket is quite open. We can see exactly where it is, that it's in front of the bushes. It is downhill, but it's kind of tough to go long here. So we'll see how we end up, but we'll try to see try using the Streamline Pilot again and see how that works. short and right. It looks like I don't have my distances quite figured out yet. Maybe a Marshy Miracle putt for 3. Correct height, just a little left. Even though I missed that, I'm pretty happy with that putt. If you're looking past the bushes a little bit, you could see the tee for hole 6 just past the basket of 5. So with our back to the tee at 5, we just follow this tree line here and peek around the corner, we have the tee for hole 6. Hole 6 is a 376-foot par 3. Again, pretty much straight uphill. You've got a couple trees to avoid at this point, but we can see where we're going on this one. And I popped that one straight up into the air. All right, let's try something a little different here. And that worked out remarkably well. Let's see if my putting game is still on. Yes, it is. With our back to the tee of hole 6, looking at the basket of 6, to get to the tee of hole 7, if we take a left, turn this way, and we go over to the rock wall, and T7 happens to be right next to T4 that we played earlier. Hole 7 is a 529-foot par 4. There are a couple different options here. I'm going to play this sort of through the tree gap on the left, far left, and go around the pond and up the hill. You can see the basket from the tee now. It's sort of tucked in. If we go straight across the pond, up in the woods on the hill, we can barely see it from here, but it's the same tee that we could see off in the distance as we were playing hole 5 earlier going downhill. It's that one up in the woods. If you do want to get more aggressive and try something a little bit risky with potentially a pretty good reward, you can go over the pond here. That is an option to sort of go through this straight gap here. The downside is that obviously you're going over a pond, and as I have not been throwing the disc particularly well today, I'm not sure A, I can reach that, or B, I have the accuracy to not bounce off a tree and end up in the drink anyways. So just as a result of that, I'm going to be playing far more conservatively, going around to the left, and we'll see how this works out. Well, that was terrible. That disc I've always had issues trying to get up flat, but the good news is it sort of rolled into a position where it was so bad that it's short of the pond, so I'm okay going across the little pond on the second shot, and we'll see where we are from there. The signs of spring are here. Got some pretty flowers starting to bloom in the middle of sort of in the middle of the fairway on this hole, but you wouldn't really want to be here. So I think hopefully these are safe here, although it is supposed to snow in a couple days, so hopefully they don't freeze. There is a drop zone for hole 7 for going into the pond. I am fairly far off to the left, but I'm close enough to the pond where I feel like I will have no problem getting it across. We can see the basket from here up in the woods, and we'll see how I end up here. The bad news is I'm way right of where I wanted to be. The good news is I am dry. All right, couple things to note here. I am way right of here, and also there's a small creek at the bottom of the hill that is marked by out-of-bounds stakes. So we just want to make sure we don't end up in there. Not because we're going to lose a disc, but just because it's going to cost us an extra stroke. So, can I make a putt for 5? Nope, we'll take our 6. to get from here to the next tee, here we are looking back out in the open field. If we take a left, there is a nice little path over here. And we can follow along the path. And here's the OG hole 10 tee. But if we continue on, we have another tee up here. And here we have the tee for hole 8. Hole 8 is a 500-foot par 10. It does go significantly uphill on the second shot. There is some out of bounds here. There's this little creek in front that's out of bounds. There is a drop zone just on the other side. And there is the lake that we mentioned earlier that is just beyond the crest of the hill. You cannot see it from the tee, but the lake is basically from, if you look at the smaller tree out in the fairway, there's a group of 3 or 4 or 5 of them. The rightmost one is at approximately the right edge of the lake, so we want to make sure we stay right of there in order to stay dry. Because of all the trees there and how I've been throwing, I'm going to be a little bit more conservative and just put it out there so I can sort of let it rip on my second shot. That's good and safe and dry. Hooray. Something else I will point out here from the tee is that there is a bridge to the left that will allow us to get out into the fairway. So we'll take a little walk from here to the fairway. Something else to note is that right here is the tee pad for hole 10. So when we come back after playing hole 9, that's where we come from. And if we cross over this little bridge here, this sends us out into the fairway. Now, I've done some exploring. I haven't found one of the new baskets for hole 9. However, I believe that the basket for hole 9 is the old basket that is tucked into the trees over there. The basket that's yellow, that's bright yellow over there, that's our hole 2 basket. So that's not what we're going to for hole 9. And if we come up here a little bit further, right up here we can see the pond. And we have the drop zone for the pond that's still on this side, but it's a much shorter shot to get over the drop zone. And I am right over here. So let's see what we can do from here. I've got a couple trees to go around on my second shot, but I'm far enough up where I've got a few different options here. So I think I'm just going to play my trail, which has been sort of my workhorse through most of this round. Not great, but that should be an easy par 4 from there. Maybe a miracle putt for birdie from here? No birdie, but drop in for par. Looking back at the tee for 8 to get to the tee of 9 from the basket of 8. We can go past the basket back towards the tee a little bit. Take a right. There is a break in the rock wall. Something to note is that this rock wall is out of bounds on hole 8 as well, apparently. And if we cross over, here we have the tee pad for hole 9. Hole 9 is a 290-foot par 3. There is a little bit of a dogleg left to right, so there are 2 main gaps here off the tee, the left gap and the right gap. You can see the basket. It is just to the right of the leftmost tree on the right gap. So there are a couple different options here. There is out of bounds right if you go too far right, and there is out of bounds left and wet. So This is a very narrow tunnel shot here. There's also out of bounds long. So here, again, I think control is more important, at least for score, than necessarily how far you can throw the disc off this shot. There's not really any risk of losing a disc here. It's just, it's going to cost you a stroke or two. Well, that was a very fortunate tree kick. It was going to go out of bounds left, I think, but it did clear the little out of bounds short, and I think I at least have a clear shot from there. So the out of bounds stake here is basically just that shack is out of bounds apparently, and it does open up to the left after that. So if I hadn't hit that tree, I would be quite a bit further up. I am sort of in the casual water here. You can see my disc off to the right. Again, here, because of all the out of bounds and raised basket, it's going to be better to be short than long on this one. All right, that was good. I'm pretty sure that stayed in bounds, and that's going to be basically a drop in for 3 from there. All right, here at the basket of 9, we can see if we look behind, the out of bounds is very close. It's only about 20 feet from the back of the basket to the out of bounds stakes. Somehow I'm between those two. I've got a 10-foot drop in for par 3 here. So let's see what we can do here. Hooray, we will take our 3, grab our disc out of the basket, and if we turn back to the right and follow along this right edge of the trees, and we take a right down this little path here. This is a little swampy here, so just going around, and if we stay right here, we cross over the same bridge that we crossed over going from the tee of hole 8 to the fairway of hole 8. This bridge, and to our right we have the tee for hole 10. Hole 10 is a 219-foot par 3. It does go right to left at the end. You cannot see the basket from the tee. However, if you can see the pine trees on the left side up in the fairway past the sort of main group of trees that don't have any leaves on them yet, that the basket is in that cluster of pine trees up on the left. So this is a very narrow shot. Again, mostly a placement shot. With it being 219, distance isn't a huge concern. It's just trying to keep the disc out of the trees. I will also say that there is out of bounds on both the right and the left, marked by stakes, although I believe the out of bounds on the left is the rock wall that stops about 85 feet off the tee. But yeah, this is a very narrow fairway, so again, placement is more important than distance here. That skipped into the trees on the right fairly far up the fairway, but I think it stayed in bounds, so I should have a reasonable shot at 3 from there. Here we are about 75 feet from the basket. I'm slightly ahead to the right. My disc did stay in bounds. The out of bounds does fade away further right the further you go in, but I'm really only about 5 feet off the edge of the fairway, and I think I have a clean-ish shot to the basket from here. Again, the whole trick is just avoiding all the trees near the basket, because there are a lot of things to hit about 30 feet out from the basket in pretty much every direction. That was going to be pretty good, but it skipped, bounced off a rock, and stopped directly underneath the basket. So drop in for 3 from there. From the basket of 10, looking back up the fairway towards that secondary tee and the primary tee, if we turn around to our left and we look down the hill, there we have the tee pad for hole 11. Hole 11 is a 215-foot par 3. It is probably about 8 to 10 feet uphill. there are two different options that you can use. There's a left path and a right path. The basket is dead center. You can see the basket if you're standing dead center in the middle of the tee and look straight through the cluster of trees. So it is just behind a small pine tree off in the distance. You can see the basket behind it. There are some rocks to the left, so looks like there's more open air to the right. So you have, again, a couple different options here. Me being primarily a right-hand forehand player, though the left gap is smaller, that does suit my game a little bit more. That took a huge skip and went way over to the right side of the fairway. All right, that was a very odd skip. There are a couple rocks and roots and stumps over there, so I'm thinking it must have hit one of those at just the right angle to take a huge flare skip, because that went 30, 40 feet straight right, and that disc just doesn't do that. I've never had it do anything close to that before. So we do still have a outside putt for birdie here. It is significantly uphill around the basket, so there is a chance that if we get a bounce and a bad roll away, it could roll all the way back down to where we are, but we'll see how this goes. There's a low ceiling there, so didn't really have a whole lot of a shot, but at least drop in for 3. All right, here from the basket of 11, we have a couple of different options if we want to jump ahead a little bit. If we continue up the hill past the hole and go left, the tee for hole 15 is not too far, sort of tucked into the trees just to the left of the top of that hill. If we want to jump all the way to hole 18, if we go back towards the tee of 11 and take a left down that path there, over towards the pond, that goes over to the tee of 18. But to get to 12, we take this path to the right, which I would say is the least obvious of the 3, and continue through the trees here. This is a nice, well-defined path, although it's not obvious that this is the direction that we're supposed to go from the basket, aside from the tape. And at the end of this little pathway, we can go up the stairs, and we have the tee box for hole 12. Hole 12 is a 237-foot par 3. It does go a little bit from left to right. You can see the basket if you're standing on the tee or you go to the crest of that hill just in front, but it is off to the right side, not too far past. If you see the diagonal tree that's leaning to the right, past the large pine tree in front of us, the basket is sort of right under that triangular gap there. That's what we're going for. I popped that up and it got a first tree kick a little bit right, but then it hit a second tree and kicked way right. So I did make it a good chunk of the way down there. I'm going to have to scramble. No shot at 2, but can probably still get a 3 from there. All right, we're at the crest of the hill, about 25 feet past the tee of hole 12, because from here, just to the right of the large tree in the middle of the fairway, off in the distance, we can catch the upper right-hand corner of the basket. So that is where we are going. Here we are on the left edge of the fairway, where we have a nice gap to the basket from there. If we pan a little bit to the right, we can see the old basket, and I ended up about 15 feet from the old basket, so I kind of wish I had been going through that one after my tee shot. However, my second shot, I found a gap to get through most of the trees, so I'm up there and have about a 25-ish foot putt for par from up there. All right, let's see if I can make a putt for par. Missed the par putt, but had a nice save for bogey from there. Now, to get from the basket of 12 to the tee for 13, here we are on the right side of the basket. We can see the rock wall to the right of the basket. And if we turn around, we have the tee for hole 13 directly in front of us. Hole 13 is a 155-foot par 3, significantly uphill. It does move right to left a little bit, but we can see the basket from here. If we look at the tree on the left edge of the fairway that is sticking farthest out to the right, the basket is just beyond that at the top of the hill. Though it is not marked, there is a rock wall to the left, which in most places indicates out of bounds, but hopefully that shouldn't be an issue on this short of a hole. All right, so that worked out well. I think I may have a shot at a birdie from there. Let's see if I can make my first birdie of the round. Hooray, that was about 23 feet for a birdie, so I am pretty happy with that. Now, to get from 13 to 14 is pretty easy. If we just look past the basket of 13 to our right, you'll see we have the tee pad for 14 right in front of us. Hole 14 is a 406 par 4, dogleg left. I just stepped off some distances. It's about 150 feet to clear the pond and about 200 feet to get up to the crest of the hill around the corner. Basically, if we can get up onto that flat section past the trees on the left, then we will be able to see the basket around the corner from there and have a fairly open shot. There are a couple trees in the way, but we can avoid them. Basically, the deal is the further up that fairway we can get, the less the trees are going to come into play on our second shot, and the better off we're going to be. I will say the pond is probably 3 to 4 feet deep, so if you lose a disc in the middle of it, it's going to be tough to get. The water is pretty clear, so you may be able to see it, but getting at it if it's dead center in the pond may be another matter entirely. I yanked that one right and bounced it off a tree, but it's at least dry, and I may be able to get a good chunk of the way up to the basket from there. Here we are in the fairway of 14, looking back at the tee. We're about 175 feet out. If we turn around, this is where it starts to open up. So you can see this whole field from the tee. Off to the left, that's where the basket is. All right, so I ended up here after my second shot. Let's see if I can get close to have an easy par. Maybe not easy par, but shot at par. All right, something to note around the green here is that the green does have rock walls around the edge of it, and though they are not out of bounds, especially if you go off shorter, there's a pretty good drop off. So it's definitely going to make your shot a lot more difficult if you accidentally go over the rock wall either right or long. Another 15-foot putt made. That's good. Now, to get from the basket of 14 to the tee of 15, if we continue past the basket and follow this trail out to the road-ish, and then we take a left turn, this will bring us right up to the tee of 15. Hole 15 is a 273-foot par 3, significantly downhill and significantly left to right. It's not a sharp dogleg, but it does continue gradually going right for quite a ways. I would say the basket is probably in the line of just to the right of that large birch tree that's just on the other side of this pathway. But again, 273 feet out. Get around there. That brushed one of the trees sort of at the right edge, but it did poke through and it does open up. So I did get quite a good ways down to the basket. All right, I have a circle 2 birdie putt. This is longer than the ones I've been making, but we'll see if I can nail this one. Missed, but easy 3, and at least I didn't leave it short. POV for par. Also, you may note this is the first basket that is not yellow that we've played, except for hole 9. To get from the green basket of 15 to the tee for 16, if we have the pond on our left, we want to take a right, and we can go up this small path here. And then right at the top of this is the tee for hole 16. Hole 16 is a 260-foot par 3, dead straight. There are a couple trees to worry about. Little pine tree on the left that may come into play for me being right-hand forehand, but straight away we can see the basket. Again, another green basket, but we know what to do from here. All right, that took another huge flare skip forward, and I'm right, but I think I've got a circle 2 putt for birdie from there again. Let's see if I can make another bid at birdie from circle 2. Way too much anhyzer, but should be another drop-in 3 from there. Oh, this is interesting. So, just so we know, around the basket here, just to the right, left, and long, there is a solid 4-foot drop-off, kind of straight down. So this kind of is a death putt, what I just attempted. I'm way off to the left, so I've got a real tricky shot here to save my 3. Whew, snuck that one in there. So to get from the basket of 16 to the tee for 17, with our back to the tee, we can, if we look on the ground, we can see we're back to some of these having the arrows on them and the tape marker. So if we take a right through this path here, and we follow this along, and if we take a left, we have the tee for hole 17. Hole 17 is a 230-foot par 3, significant dogleg left. You kind of need to get over the hill and past those couple of trees that are on the left edge of the fairway over the crest, and then make a hard left turn. Unfortunately, there aren't any real obvious gaps to go for, so this is kind of just a toss it out there and hope you go left and hope you luck out and hit a gap and miss all the trees. Well, definitely did not miss all the trees. Well, I guess I am kind of in an opening to the basket from here, but you can see on the right, it's just trees everywhere, so there's not any good clear path to the basket. I may have what's kind of the clearest shot, but it's long, and there's also a pond that is OB long, not too far behind the basket. So again, this is just going to be kind of get it up close. If I'm at basket height and miss, chances are very good I'm going to end up in that pond. And I'm really glad I hit that last tree. Otherwise, that definitely would have been wet and possibly gone. Here we are long of the basket. And if we pan down a little bit, I am right in front of us here. And if I go 5 feet to the right of where I was, we are out of bounds and wet. And my drive, I think, clobbered this tree that's just to my left here. So that could very well have ended in disaster here. Let's see if I can save par from here. No par, but I've got a 4. Right, to get from the basket of 17 to the tee for 18, first there are a couple options here. If we go just a little bit sort of past the basket, there is a drop zone and short tee over there. Or if we go further right, this is kind of where I just took my putt from. There is this bridge, and we can cross the bridge here. This is not the most stable bridge in the world. And follow this path. Follow the sound of the quacking ducks. Those may not be ducks, those may be frogs or something else. And here we are at the tee for 18. Hole 18 is a 339-foot par 3 dogleg left. Basically, the deal is if you go out into the field, then you follow the left edge of the tree line up to the basket. The basket is open and out in the field. It is one of the older baskets, so it's a little bit difficult to see. But the whole key is just making sure you get out through this main gap and into the field is the big thing. The pond is out of bounds. There is a drop zone on the other side. The pond is big enough that if you lose something in the middle, it's probably gone. But the upside is it's not that far. So again, the idea is just get something out in the field and you'll be good. And even that hit a high tree, pulled it left, but it's in the trees a little bit, but I should be able to at least see the basket from where I am. Now, to get around the pond, we have two options. We can either go back by the 17 basket, or I think the safer play is to take a right and follow along here, back towards the basket of, I believe it was hole 11 that we have. This is sort of the cutout for 11, and we take a left, follow along here, and we have this little bridge to cross. Keep going down the path, and here is the drop zone, and I made it out to just in front of the drop zone. And if we look off in the distance, straight out towards between those two lighter colored trees off in the distance, we can see the basket. Let's see if we can end the round on a miracle par putt. A little long, but not too bad. So now, after we took our 5 to end the round, so to get from the basket of 18 back to our car with the road in front of us, if we take a right, turn to the right, and we look up, we have the barn right in front of us. And just so we can be a little bit aware, we have the tee pad for hole 1 to our left and the basket for hole 1 to our right. So we do want to be a little bit careful and just make sure we're not crossing somebody else's path here. Here we are back at the little starting hut and starting kiosk.
Though there were no active upgrades that I saw at the time of filming, with the course changes that have been made, I would expect that the tee signs will be being replaced. The hole 9 tee sign in particular was completely illegible with all of the ink having worn off the side. The thumbnail for this video is taken from the drop zone just short of the pond on hole 7 looking towards the basket. This picture gives a good idea of a lot of what this course is about. Some open shots, some wooded throws, some water or OB that you have to avoid, and in some cases, all of the above. Hole 7 is also my favorite hole on the course. Though there is water, there is a way to play around it, but if you have good accuracy and distance, there's a significant reward in a much easier second shot if you're willing to take the risk of going over the pond on your tee shot. The basket going back into the woods also makes for a challenging second shot to get to within circle 1 from the pond avoidance path to the left. Honorable mentions go to hole 8 for many of the same reasons, and to hole 14 for requiring precision off the tee, and though only requiring about 150 feet to clear the pond, more distance will lead to a better opportunity for a birdie. My least favorite hole is hole 17. Though there is a narrow path to get to the basket from the tee with a perfectly hyzer angled right-hand backhand, the effective path width is only about 5 feet wide, and you cannot see it from the tee. Also, with the pond just past the basket and the second throw being slightly downhill, it turns the hole into a disc golf equivalent of Plinko, where you are a bad tree kick away from ending up with a lost disc if you happen to go a bit long. Removing some of the trees would make this hole feel much more skill-based rather than the luck-based feel it currently has. The first hole is a very good introduction to what this course is all about. It's a 275-foot shot where if you want to have a chance at birdie, you need to have the correct line off the tee or the trees will make it very difficult to have a clear look at the basket, and a missed putt has a chance of going OB long. These characteristics show up on many of the holes for this course. The last hole, on the other hand, doesn't have me leaving the course with a positive feeling. A missed gap off the tee may result in a disc lost in the pond. At 339 feet uphill with a dogleg left and a low ceiling gap, this is a hole that, much like hole 1 at Otter Brook, is too short to be a par 4, but there is no good path for a touring pro to consistently get within circle 2 off the tee. Though par 3 does feel good here, without an excellent second shot, you'll be playing for a 4 rather than for a 3. Course navigation was inconsistent here. There were places where it was quite clear where you were supposed to go that were well marked, and there were others that were not. Some of the confusion was likely caused by overlaps, splits, and rejoinings of the main course and the OG18 course. Improved signage and directional indicators would go a long way to figuring this out. With some of the course changes that seem to have occurred since the course was last updated in UDisc, where some of the holes having had slight changes and some having been reordered, this made following the course particularly challenging in places. Though there has been a significant upgrade to the bulk of UDisc since I played and since most of the editing and script was written for this, there are still some inconsistencies on the course that have not been fully resolved. Where that wasn't the case though, the course was quite easy to follow. There wasn't much middle ground here. Finding where the next tee pad is pretty clear everywhere except for holes 9 and 12. However, from the basket of 11, I did find the tee pads of both holes 15 and 18 by following what appeared to be the more obvious paths from the basket. Finding the basket that you were supposed to go to was not clear from the tee on holes 3, 10, 12, 13 due to the tee sign, more on those later, 15, and 17. In addition, I spent far too much time looking for the basket on hole 9, where it was one of 2 holes that used the older style Mach 5 baskets, the other being 18. With there being no tee sign there, no hole number on the basket, and it not matching UDisc, I'm still not 100% sure that what I played was the intended hole 9 on the main course. Navigating this course was like playing the Oregon Trail. Sometimes things go fine, maybe you need food or water, but there's a pretty big jump up from peaceful mundane travel to losing time due to a blizzard, your wagon catching on fire, dying of a broken leg, or dying due to dysentery. This is not the safest course for discs. There are places where you could lose a disc in the brush on hole 5 or get run over by a car with a bad, poorly timed throw that goes left on hole 4, but by far the biggest chance to lose a disc is in the ponds that come into play on holes 7, 8, 14, 17, and 18. The smaller creeks and marsh areas aren't deep enough to lose a disc, but a disc more than 5 feet from the shoreline of any of those ponds is likely gone. The good news is that they are all avoidable, and as long as you throw accurately, you only need to clear about 150 feet off the tee for all of those to be safe, other than 7 and 8. The bad news is that on hole 14 and especially 17 and 18, trees come into play where a disc slightly off course could hit a tree and bounce into the middle of the pond. Though I did play the intended long tee for all of these, in all of these cases I did use a disc that I wouldn't be upset if I lost rather than what the ideal disc might have been. There is a little variance in the tee pads. This is mostly due to using the locally sourced materials rather than anything else. Most of the tee pads are decorative concrete, which provides good grip in both the wet and the dry. The tee of 7 in particular uses a rock slab that I'm guessing originated somewhere on the property, and the course designers thought it would make a nice tee pad. There is some variance in the baskets. On the main layout that I played, most of the baskets were Latitude 64 Pro targets with yellow banding. Holes 15, 16, and 17 have Prodigy targets with green banding. The green banding is particularly easy to see, not just in the video, but on course as well. These are all fine. Holes 9 and 18, however, as well as the OG layout holes with different basket locations, use older style Mach 5 baskets. The baskets themselves aren't the problem and would be fine if there was some information on the tee sign to indicate where you are going for that hole. Having the hole numbers on the baskets would also be of great assistance. Though there is some directional indication of red and blue tape being used in places, it is unclear which color goes with which course because of the other inconsistencies. The overall course signage was mediocre to poor. On the tee signs, the only information provided was the hole number for either the main layout or the OG layout or both, and the distance. Though these signs did appear to be temporary, the signs should at a minimum have a picture of the outline of the hole and an indication of where the out-of-bounds areas are on the hole. There are a lot of out-of-bounds areas on this course, and it can catch you by surprise as it did to me going right on hole 2. There are OB areas that can potentially come into play on every hole except 6, 15, and 16. That's over 85% of the holes on the course. UDisc only has OB listed on hole 8, though elevation change would be nice to have as well. This is not nearly as critical as the hole outline and OB information. I hope there are plans in place to rectify this situation, as the lack of information on the signs makes it very difficult for someone playing the course for the first time to follow, and I find the current sign situation is unacceptable for a pay-to-play course. Another concern I have here is that there are some places where I feel that the tee boxes and fairways in some cases are not far enough apart and could potentially create situations where people could be hit by discs on a busy day. Holes 18 and 1 are probably far enough apart where an errant tree bounce from the tee of 18 is not likely to get to someone on hole 1, but hole 3 and the other shorter holes in that field that cross paths, the tee of hole 6 is very reachable by an errant shot on hole 5, the fairway of 6 and the left fairway option from the tee of hole 7 are basically pointed right at one another, and the hole 7 tee is potentially reachable by a significant overthrow to the basket of 8. There are a couple of other places, such as the tees of hole 13 and 14, where a tree bounce could end up with someone needing to yell 4, but the places I mentioned earlier are all open shots that could easily result in someone getting hit. My overall course rating is that with the course as it is, I would be willing to drive 1 hour and 20 minutes to play this course for the first time, and 45 minutes to play this course again. This may have gone up if I had been able to spend all day there and play the OG 18 course as well. This course does have a lot of interesting and challenging holes and shots that are fun, but is overridden by the course navigation issues that I had. Though this video should help you if you go there for the first time, I find that for a relatively mature course, there needs to be better and more permanent signage, at least for the holes that are unlikely to change. Even if better temporary signs were put in with enough information so that you don't have a "surprise, you're now out of bounds" moment, that would be a huge help. The course driving distance is helped in that there aren't very many courses nearby. The closest 18-hole course is the top-rated course in New Hampshire, which I have not played yet, and is also pay-to-play, Top of the Hill. The Valley is an excellent 9-hole course that is about 20 minutes away, though Northwind has more open distance shots than the Valley does. If you're looking for half-open, half-wooded, the 9-hole courses at New England College, which is wooded, and Hillsborough Deering High School, which is open, are also within a half-hour drive. There are links to these 3 courses in the description. I probably will play this course again, though it is not high on my priority list, and will likely not do so until either the signage is updated or I can spend a full day there playing both the OG 18 and the main 18 that I played in this video, and it won't be on a day that I expect it to be busy. I would like to play it at some point in the summer or fall when the ground is not saturated from weeks of rain and snow melt to see how much it changes so the course is more like north wind rather than north water. Like, share, and subscribe, and check out my other video linked here or the playlist of my disc golf courses of New Hampshire linked in the description. Your likes and subscriptions go a long way to help keep me motivated to make these course playthroughs.